You want to know about change? Let me tell you about the day my wife Brooke decided to declutter our garage and ended up decluttering our entire marriage in the process. Some people think they're improving your life when really they're just showing you exactly who they are. And sometimes that revelation is worth more than whatever they took from you. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I discovered what Brooke had done. I'd gotten up at 5:30, same as always, to grab my grandfather's vintage Craftsman toolbox before heading to the biggest commercial job of my career, the Riverside Falls Municipal Complex, a 3-building project worth $2.7 million. The kind of contract that separates serious contractors from weekend warriors who think owning a circular saw makes them construction experts. I'd been preparing for this job for 6 months. The foundation work alone required specialized masonry tools, not the mass-produced garbage they sell at. Big box stores, but real tools. Tools with weight and balance. Tools that had poured concrete for the Denver Federal Building back in 1987. Tools that knew the difference between precision and close enough. I walked into our garage, coffee in hand, mentally cataloging what I'd need for the day's concrete forms, and found empty space where 3 generations of Chambers family craftsmanship used to sit. Not just empty, clean empty. Like someone had taken a shop vacuum to remove even the outline where the toolbox had rested for the past 8 years. "Brooke," I called, walking back into the kitchen, where she was scrolling through Instagram while her $17 specialty coffee got cold. Always scrolling, always curating some perfect image of our life for people who probably couldn't care less about her morning latte art. "Morning, honey," she said without looking up from her phone screen, which displayed some influencer's perfectly arranged breakfast spread. "Don't forget I have that networking event tonight. The one with the regional fashion brands. Could be huge for my career. I'm thinking of ordering that new dress from Nordstrom. Where's my toolbox?" That got her attention, but not the kind I wanted. She looked up with that expression she got when I asked about anything that interfered with her carefully orchestrated world. Part confusion, part annoyance. Like I was speaking a foreign language she couldn't be bothered to learn. "Which toolbox? You have like 6 different boxes out there." "My grandfather's Craftsman set, the red one with the brass fittings. It was right there next to the workbench where it's been for 8 years." "Oh, that old thing." She waved her hand dismissively, the same gesture she used when explaining why we couldn't afford something she wanted, while simultaneously justifying something else she'd already bought. "I gave it to the Martinez kid next door. Danny's heading to trade school in the fall, and it was just taking up space. Besides, you never use those rusty old tools anyway. You always grab the electric ones." I stood there holding my coffee mug, one of 6 identical white ceramic mugs that had replaced my collection of job site souvenirs because they didn't match the kitchen aesthetic, feeling something fundamental shift in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like the moment when you're framing a house and realize someone measured wrong, and now everything that comes after is going to be off by just enough to matter. "You gave away my grandfather's tools." "Wesley, they were just sitting there collecting dust. And you have all those new tools from Home Depot. The electric ones that actually work efficiently. I mean, who uses hand tools anymore? It's not like you're building log cabins. Just sitting there, collecting dust." Those words hung in the air like sawdust after a cut, settling into every corner of the conversation and changing the texture of everything they touched. My grandfather had been a master carpenter back when that meant something more than having the right YouTube subscription. When men built things with their hands and took pride in the weight of quality steel against seasoned wood. That toolbox had traveled from job to job for 40 years, building half the residential district in Riverside Falls. The brass fittings had been polished smooth by decades of careful handling. The drawers slid open with the kind of precision that modern manufacturers had given up achieving. My father had used those same tools to build the deck where Brooke now posted her morning yoga photos, the ones that always got exactly 67 likes from the same circle of marketing executives and yoga instructors who comprised her entire social world. I'd learned to measure twice, cut once with those tools, learned the difference between a job done right and a job done fast. And to Brooke, they were just clutter. "I need them for the municipal job," I said, keeping my voice level the way you do when explaining something important to someone who's already decided not to listen. "Today, the specialized masonry tools for the foundation work. Some of those tools are the only ones I have for specific applications. For the first time, She looked something approaching concerned, but not about what she'd done. Never about what she'd done. About how it might affect her perfectly planned day, her networking event, her image of seamless domestic management. Well, can't you just go buy new ones? Or borrow some from Shane? It's not like you can't afford it with this big municipal contract. I mean, this is probably the perfect excuse to upgrade to all new equipment anyway. Can't you just buy new ones? Like 40 years of patina and perfect balance could be replaced with a trip to the hardware store. Like the weight of my grandfather's hands wearing smooth, the handles meant nothing more than inefficiency. Like tradition was just another word for inconvenience that interfered with her vision of our optimized life. "I'll handle it," I said, and walked out of the kitchen before I said something that would turn this conversation into the kind of fight that wakes up neighbors and becomes neighborhood gossip. That was the moment, right there. Not when I decided to leave her, but when I decided to start paying attention. Really paying attention to how Brooke saw me, saw us, saw the life we'd built together. And what I saw wasn't going to be pretty. The Martinez kid was decent enough. When I knocked on his door at 6:30 in the morning, he answered still half asleep, but dressed for his part-time job at the lumber yard. Danny was a good kid, quiet, respectful, the kind of teenager who actually listened when adults talked instead of waiting for his turn to speak. "Mr. Chambers, is everything okay? I need to talk to you about the toolbox my wife gave you yesterday." He looked immediately uncomfortable, the way kids do when they realize they've accidentally walked into the middle of adult drama. "She said you were upgrading your equipment and didn't need the old stuff anymore." Of course she did. In Brooke's world, everything was always an upgrade, an improvement, a strategic optimization. The idea that something old might be better than something new didn't compute in her carefully programmed worldview. "Danny, that toolbox belonged to my grandfather. Those tools have been in my family for over 40 years. My wife didn't have the right to give them away." The kid's face went pale. "Mr. Chambers, I had no idea they were family heirlooms. Mrs. Chambers made it sound like you had plenty of tools, and these were extras you were getting rid of. She even mentioned you'd bought all new electric tools and wouldn't miss the hand tools. It's not your fault, son, but I need them back." He didn't argue, didn't make excuses, just walked to his garage and brought back the toolbox. Looking at it again, seeing the way the morning light caught the brass corners and highlighted the worn spots where 3 generations of hands had gripped the handles, I felt something settle back into place in my chest. "I'm really sorry about the confusion, Mr. Chambers. If I'd known—" "You handled this exactly right, Danny. Don't worry about it." But as I drove to the job site, toolbox secured in the bed of my truck, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Mrs. Chambers made it sound like you had plenty of tools and wouldn't miss the hand tools. The casual way Brooke had constructed a narrative that made her decision seem reasonable, even generous. The way she'd anticipated my objections and preemptively dismissed them. I made it to the municipal site on time, but something had changed. As I worked that day setting forms for the foundation of what would become the new city administration building, I found myself thinking about patterns instead of concrete ratios. How long had Brooke been making decisions about my life without consulting me? How many of my things had disappeared into her vision of what our home should look like? Shane Martinez, my old foreman and Danny's grandfather, was supervising the electrical rough-in on the adjacent building. We'd worked together for 15 years before I started my own contracting business, and he had this way of reading situations that came from decades of managing crews and projects. "You look like someone who just discovered his measurements were off," he said during our lunch break, settling onto a stack of lumber with the kind of grunt that comes from 30 years of physical labor. "Wife gave away my grandfather's toolbox to your grandson yesterday. Didn't ask, didn't mention it, just decided it was clutter." Shane was quiet for a long moment, chewing his sandwich and looking out at the worksite, where 3 generations of local contractors were building something that would last longer than most of their marriages. "That toolbox with the brass fittings, the one your grandfather used on the federal building. That's the one. Jesus, Wesley, those tools are probably worth more than most people make in a month. The vintage craftsman stuff from that era, collectors pay serious money for complete sets in that condition." I hadn't thought about monetary value. To me, they were priceless in a way that had nothing to do with money, but Shane's comment planted a seed that would grow into something more strategic over the coming weeks. "It's not about the money, Shane. I know it's not, but it might be to her. Women like your wife, they think everything has a price tag and an upgrade path. They don't understand that some things get more valuable with age, not less. That afternoon, instead of going straight home after work, I walked around our house like I was seeing it for the first time. Really seeing it, not just living in it. The garage had been organized into clean labeled bins that looked like something from a home improvement magazine. My workbench, which I'd built from reclaimed oak salvaged from a demolished barn, had been reduced to a display piece. The pegboard where I'd hung tools within easy reach had been rearranged according to size and color rather than function. The basement workshop I'd spent 3 years building had become storage for Brooke's seasonal decorations and the exercise equipment she bought, with religious regularity and used exactly never. My drafting table, where I planned projects and calculated load requirements, was buried under boxes of artificial Christmas trees and Halloween decorations that cost more than the materials for most home improvement projects. Inside the house, the evidence was even clearer. The walls showcased Brooke's aesthetic. Modern, clean, expensive, and completely devoid of anything that acknowledged the man who paid for it all. My hunting photos had been replaced with abstract art that looked like something a computer algorithm had generated. My comfortable recliner, worn smooth by 15 years of post-work relaxation, had been upgraded to something that looked museum quality, but felt like sitting on a sculpture. Even my books had been edited. The construction guides, business management texts, and technical manuals that represented decades of learning had been moved to make room for Brooke's collection of marketing guides and lifestyle magazines, with titles like Optimize Your Everything and The Minimalist Executive. I'd been erased from my own home, one improvement at a time. Each decision had probably seemed minor to Brooke, replacing an old photo here, upgrading furniture there, organizing spaces to be more efficient. But the cumulative effect was the complete elimination of any evidence that a construction contractor lived in this house. Everything that spoke to my profession, my interests, my history, had been systematically removed or relocated until our home reflected only her vision of who we should be. That night, I started a list. Not for revenge, not yet. Just documentation. A project manager's approach to understanding the scope of the problem. When had my fishing gear been moved to the garage? When had my truck been relegated to the driveway because Brooke's BMW needed the cleaner garage space? When had I stopped having opinions about how we spent our money? The list grew longer than I expected, and more detailed. March 2019. My gun cabinet moved to the basement for safety reasons, despite our never having children in the house. June 2019. My leather recliner replaced with a modern sectional that cost more than my monthly truck payment. September 2019, my workshop radio disappeared because it was too loud for the neighbors. Never mind that I only used it during reasonable hours. The pattern was clear once I started paying attention. Brooke didn't destroy my things outright. That would have been too obviously hostile. Instead, she managed them away through a combination of reasonable-sounding arguments and fait accompli relocations. By the time I noticed something was gone or changed, she'd already constructed a logical explanation for why the change was necessary, beneficial, or overdue. Over the next few weeks, I paid attention to our conversations with new ears, the way a building inspector looks for code violations in what appears to be solid construction. Brooke talked about our decisions, but they were always decisions she'd made and assumed I'd accept. She managed our social calendar, but it was always her friends, her networking events, her career priorities taking precedence. She decorated our home, but it reflected only her taste, her comfort, her image of what successful people should own. The poker game on Friday nights became my laboratory for testing this theory. Shane hosted at his house, and the regular crew included contractors, electricians, plumbers, and the occasional small business owner. Real men doing real work, talking about real problems. Anyone else feel like their house doesn't belong to them anymore? I asked one night after folding a weak hand and watching Tommy Rodriguez, our local plumbing contractor, consider his bet. Jesus, yes, Tommy said immediately. My wife redecorated the living room last month. Cost $4,000 and looks like a furniture store showroom. I can't even put my feet on the coffee table because it's investment furniture. Investment furniture, repeated Eddie Walsh, who ran the electrical contracting business his father started. What's it supposed to appreciate in value like real estate? That's exactly what she said. Everything in our house is either an investment, an upgrade, or a strategic improvement. Nothing is just comfortable anymore. Shane dealt the next hand while weighing in with the authority of a man who'd been married 37 years. The thing about wives like that is they're always improving you whether you want it or not. And improvement always means getting rid of what came before. The conversation continued for another hour, and I realized I wasn't alone in feeling erased by well-intentioned optimization. Every man at that table had stories about possessions that had disappeared, hobbies that had been redirected, spaces that had been reassigned. The common thread was wives who saw their husbands' existing lives as rough drafts to be edited into final versions. But I was the only one who seemed to be doing anything about it. That Monday, I made 2 important phone calls. The first was to Nicole Rodriguez, Tommy's sister, who specialized in family law. The second was to First National Bank, where I opened a business account separate from our joint finances. I need to understand asset protection, I told Nicole during our Tuesday morning meeting at her downtown office. Hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to ensure their business assets remained separate from marital property, what would that look like? Nicole was direct in the way that successful lawyers learn to be. Hypothetically, someone in that situation would want to establish clear financial boundaries immediately. Separate bank accounts, separate credit, documented income sources. The longer you wait, the more complicated it becomes. What about existing assets, tools, equipment, business relationships? Anything purchased before marriage or inherited remains separate property unless it's been commingled. Anything purchased during marriage with joint funds becomes marital property unless there's clear documentation otherwise. I thought about my grandfather's tools, about the workshop equipment I'd bought over the years, about the client relationships I'd built through decades of reliable work. How long does someone typically have to establish this kind of separation? Depends on what they're protecting and how motivated they are. But generally speaking, the process goes faster when both parties are focused on their own futures rather than fighting over the past. That afternoon, I started the methodical documentation that would define the next phase of my life. I photographed every tool, every piece of equipment, every business asset. I gathered receipts, invoices, contracts, and correspondence. I created spreadsheets tracking income, expenses, and business relationships. The revelation might have been gradual, but my response was systematic. The same way I approached complex construction projects: measure the situation, plan the work, execute with precision. I didn't confront Brooke or start fights. Instead, I started making my own decisions quietly, methodically, with the patience that comes from understanding that good work takes time to show results. First, I opened my own bank account and started diverting my business income there, not hiding it exactly, just separating what I earned from what we spent. Brooke never asked about the finances anyway. She just used the credit cards and assumed the money would always be there, like some kind of automatic system that required no maintenance or consideration. Second, I started documenting everything with the thoroughness of a site foreman preparing for a safety inspection. Pictures of my tools before and after Brooke's organization sessions. Screenshots of her Instagram posts showing off purchases that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The designer handbags, the artisanal kitchen gadgets used exactly once, the exercise equipment that served as expensive clothing racks. Third, I began rebuilding my life outside our house. Started having lunch with Shane Martinez and the other contractors. Conversations that had nothing to do with Brooke's world of brand optimization and lifestyle curation. Joined the Friday night poker. Game religiously instead of making excuses about Brooke's dinner plans or networking events. The changes were subtle enough that Brooke didn't notice immediately. She was too busy with her own carefully managed existence. Networking events with other marketing executives. Shopping trips with her sister Stephanie, who worked in real estate, and shared Brooke's belief that everything in life could be upgraded for the right price. But eventually, she sensed something different. "You've been distant lately," she said one evening while I was reading construction specifications for a new commercial project. She was on the couch with her laptop, probably online shopping or updating her professional Instagram account with motivational quotes about women in business. Just focused on work. The municipal job is complex. "Is everything okay with us?" The question hung there like scaffolding, waiting for the building it's supposed to support. Everything okay with us? As if there was still an us to be okay, instead of two people who happened to share a mailing address and a mortgage payment. We're fine, Brooke. But we weren't fine, and we both knew it. The difference was, I'd stopped caring about fixing it. When someone shows you they don't respect the things that matter to you, eventually you stop trying to make them understand why those things matter. You stop explaining, stop arguing, stop hoping for different results from the same conversations. The municipal project was going better than expected. We'd finished the foundation work ahead of schedule and under budget, which meant the city was already talking about additional phases. The kind of success that establishes your reputation for decades and opens doors to projects you couldn't have bid on before. The Chamber's crew knows what they're doing, I overheard the city project manager tell his assistant while I was reviewing the next day's concrete pour. They're the kind of contractors who make my job easy instead of complicated. That evening, I made a decision that had been building for weeks. I bought a small workshop space downtown, nothing fancy but mine, a place where I could work on side projects without Brooke deciding my activities were clutter that interfered with her vision of our optimized home environment. The end came faster than I expected, but with the inevitability of a foundation settling on inadequate ground. 3 months after the toolbox incident, I came home from work to find Brooke in full cleaning mode. She'd spent the day organizing while I was managing the concrete work for the municipal project's second building. The evidence was stacked by the garage door, boxes labeled for donation in Brooke's neat handwriting. Spring cleaning she'd written on one, outdated items on another, Wesley's old stuff on the largest box. Inside those boxes were the last remnants of my existence in that house, my high school baseball, trophies, dust collectors, according to the note attached. My collection of vintage woodworking books that had belonged to my father, superseded by internet resources. The framed photo of my grandfather and me building my first birdhouse when I was 7 years old, not suitable for living room display. Even my old work boots were there, the ones with paint stains from every project I'd completed over the past 15 years. Each stain was a memory, a job completed, a client satisfied. To me, those boots were a history of honest work. To Brooke, they were simply worn-out footwear taking up unnecessary space. Spring cleaning, Brooke announced proudly when I found her in the kitchen, uploading photos of our decluttered garage to her Instagram story with captions about the benefits of minimalism. I figured you'd want a fresh start for summer. Isn't it amazing how much lighter everything feels when you get rid of all that old stuff? That old stuff, my history. My connections to the men who'd taught me that work was something to be proud of. That building things with your hands was valuable, that some objects carried meaning beyond their immediate utility. Where are you taking it? Goodwill pickup is tomorrow morning. But if there's anything specific you want to keep, we can find space somewhere. Although, honestly, Wesley, some of this stuff is just taking up room we could use for better things. I've been looking at home office furniture online, and there are some beautiful pieces that would really optimize the garage space. Better things. In Brooke's world, everything could be replaced with something newer, shinier, more expensive, more aligned with the image she wanted to project. Everything except the man paying for it all, and even he could apparently be improved through strategic editing of his possessions and preferences. I need to think about it, I said, looking at boxes containing 15 years of my life reduced to donation items. That night, after Brooke went to bed with her phone and her evening routine of checking Instagram likes and planning tomorrow's content, I loaded every single box into my truck, not to keep necessarily, but because they were mine to dispose of, mine to treasure, mine to decide about. The decision should have been mine. By morning, I'd made a different decision entirely. I left while Brooke was at her yoga class, the same class she attended religiously every Tuesday and Thursday, while posting inspirational quotes about balance and mindfulness to an audience of marketing executives who probably skipped their own workouts to scroll through social media. I packed 2 suitcases with clothes and moved into my downtown workshop space, which wasn't zoned for residential living, but would work temporarily while I figured out what came next. For the first week, I didn't answer Brooke's calls. I needed the silence to think, to plan, to process what 15 years of marriage had actually been versus what I'd thought it was. When I finally called her back, her tone had shifted through the predictable stages, confusion to anger, to something approaching panic. Wesley, what is this about? Are you having some kind of midlife crisis? We can work through whatever this is. I've been researching marriage counselors, and there's this woman who specializes in helping couples navigate major life transitions. This is about you giving away my grandfather's tools without asking, I said, standing in my workshop surrounded by the things that actually mattered to me. This is about you throwing away my belongings while I was at work. This is about you making decisions about my life like I don't have a voice in it. Those were just things, Wesley. Stuff, material possessions. We can replace stuff. What matters is us, our relationship, our future together. You can't replace 40 years of my father's hands wearing smooth the handles of those. Tools. You can't replace the memory of my grandfather teaching me to measure twice, cut once. You can't replace the connection to the men who came before me and taught me that work was something to be proud of. Silence on the other end of the phone. Then, I was trying to make our home better, more organized, more efficient. I thought you'd appreciate coming home to a cleaner, more optimized environment. You were making your home better, Brooke. I just happened to live there and pay for it. The divorce papers arrived at her marketing firm 3 days later, delivered by Nicole Rodriguez during Brooke's lunch meeting with potential clients. I'd chosen the timing deliberately, public enough to make a statement, professional enough to avoid creating a scene that would embarrass her in front of colleagues. The settlement negotiations were straightforward because I'd done my homework. I've kept my business, my tools, my truck, and my self-respect. Brooke kept the house, her car, her designer wardrobe, and her social media following. We split the joint accounts, though there was less money there than she expected. Most of my recent earnings had been flowing into my business account for months. The beautiful irony revealed itself 2 weeks after we signed the papers. Danny Martinez called me at the workshop, his voice excited but careful. "Mr. Chambers, you're not going to believe this. I took that toolbox to a vintage tool dealer in Denver, just to learn more about the history. The guy nearly fell over when he saw them." "What do you mean?" "Those tools are worth $18,000, maybe more to the right collector." The dealer said, "Complete sets from that era in that condition are museum quality. Your grandfather's tools are apparently legendary among people who know vintage craftsman equipment. $18,000. More than Brooke spent in 3 months on things she deemed essential for our lifestyle optimization. More than the BMW payment she'd insisted we could afford because image matters in my industry. Enough to fund a complete trade school education or start a small construction business from scratch. I drove over to Brooke's house that evening. It would always be Brooke's house now, not our house or even the house. She answered the door looking like she'd been crying, which was unlike her. Brooke managed emotions the way she managed everything else, strategically, efficiently, with specific goals in mind. "Wesley, what are you doing here?" "I came to tell you something interesting about those old tools you gave away." She invited me in, probably hoping this was the conversation where I admitted I'd overreacted, where I apologized for being unreasonable about material possessions, where I agreed to come back and pretend her casual dismissal of my heritage had been a minor misunderstanding that couples therapy could resolve. I told her about the $18,000, watched her face cycle through disbelief, quick calculation, regret, and finally, the anger that comes when someone realizes they've made a mistake that can't be undone through better planning or strategic management. Well, how was I supposed to know they were valuable? They looked like rusty old tools that belonged in a museum, not a modern garage. "You weren't supposed to know, Brooke. You were supposed to ask." "Ask what?" "Ask before you gave away my things. Ask before you threw away my belongings. Ask before you made decisions about my life based on your vision of what our life should look like." She stared at me like I was speaking a language she'd never encountered. Even now, even after everything, she couldn't understand that the money wasn't the point. The disrespect was the point. The assumption that her judgment about my possessions mattered more than my connection to my family history was the point. "We could get them back," she said finally, her marketing mind already working on solutions. "Explain the situation to the collector. I'm sure he'd understand. We could offer him a profit, make it worth his while. They're not for sale anymore, Brooke. The collector in Denver has been looking for that exact set for 15 years. Danny said the man actually cried when he saw them. They're gone, just like we are." 6 months later, my construction business landed the biggest municipal contract in Riverside Falls history. A multi-building complex that would take 3 years to complete and establish Chambers Construction as the premier commercial contractor in the region. The same project I'd been preparing for the day Brooke decided my grandfather's tools were clutter.